All right, welcome to another deep dive. Today we're taking on Rene Descartes, specifically some excerpts from his second meditation.
Ooh, yeah. This is gonna be fun.
It's heady stuff. We're dealing with some pretty big questions. What can we actually know? How do
Yeah.
we even know it? What makes us, well, us?
Classic philosophical questions. Timeless, really.
Exactly. And
hmm
Descartes, he really wrestles with these. Even if, philosophy isn't your typical thing, stick with us.
Yeah, I think anyone can get something out of this.
It's an exploration of doubt and the mind, the nature of reality itself. You'll see things a bit differently after this, I guarantee.
You're not kidding. Descartes doesn't pull any punches. He picks up right where he left off in the first meditation, and he's decided to doubt everything.
Everything.
It's like he just jumped into the deep end of like a pool of uncertainty.
That's a great way to put it. And speaking of deep ends, Descartes actually uses this analogy of a whirlpool.
Oh. He talks about feeling like he's caught in this swirling vortex of information. Can't tell which way is up. I think, honestly, a lot of us can relate to that feeling, especially these days.
Totally. We're bombarded with information from every direction. It's hard to know what to trust, what's real,
What's actually true. And that's exactly the feeling Descartes captures with that whirlpool analogy. Just totally overwhelmed, disoriented.
right. And he's searching for that one solid piece of truth in all this chaos, like finding something to grab onto so he doesn't drown in all that doubt.
It's a powerful image.
Yeah, it is. So how does he escape this whirlpool? Well, enter the famous line, I think, therefore I am.
Ah, yes. The line everyone knows, but it's so much more than just a catchy quote.
Right.
It's this revolutionary idea that really shifted the course of Western philosophy. Before Descartes, knowledge was often based on authority or tradition.
Yeah, like, it's true because so-and-so said so kind of thing.
Exactly. But Descartes, he flips the script. He says, hold on, let's start with what we know for sure without relying on anyone or anything else.
Okay, so he's saying, forget everything you've been told, strip it all away,
Yeah,
and what are you left with?
precisely. And what he finds is, even if we doubt everything else,
Even if there's, like, an evil genius out there trying to trick us.
which is a thought he actually entertains, even then, there's one thing we just can't deny. The fact that we're thinking, doubting, experiencing.
Right.
That very act of doubting, well, it proves we exist. We are thinking things, even if we're not sure about anything else.
Whoa, okay, so even if the world is an illusion, the fact that I'm experiencing that illusion,
Means you must be real in some way.
whoa, this is heavy. Has anyone else ever had that moment where, like, reality just feels a bit off, like something's not quite right?
Yeah, I think we all have those moments.
This is like Descartes is taking that feeling to the extreme.
And he doesn't stop there. He asks another question. If this I that exists is a thinking thing, what is this thinking thing?
So he's not just accepting traditional answers like, oh, it's my body or it's my soul.
Nope. He digs deeper. He realizes something pretty mind-blowing. He actually knows his mind more clearly than he knows anything physical, even his own body.
Now that's wild. You'd think our bodies would be the most real thing, the thing we know best, right? We can see them, touch them, feel them. But Descartes is saying our minds are even more fundamental.
He is. And to illustrate this point, he brings in a very interesting example, a piece of wax.
A piece of wax.
Uh.
Seriously, what's so exciting about that?
Trust me, it's more interesting than it sounds.
Okay.
So he describes this wax in vivid detail, its color, its shape, its texture, even its smell. Then he imagines holding that wax near a fire, letting it melt. What happens?
I guess it changes. Melts.
Exactly. All those sensory qualities, those things we use to identify the wax, they completely change.
Right.
But we still know it's the same piece of wax, so what's going on there?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. If our senses can be fooled that easily, what is it that tells us it's still the same wax?
This is where Descartes' genius really comes through. He says, it's our minds that are making that judgment. We're going beyond just the raw sensory data. We're grasping the wax's true nature, its essence.
So we're not just passively taking in information from our senses. We're actively using our minds to make sense of it, to figure out what's really going on.
You got it.
Okay, I'm starting to get it.
And that's something we do all the time without even realizing it. Think about recognizing a friend, even if they've changed their hairstyle or are wearing a different outfit. We're not fooled by those superficial changes because our minds have grasped something deeper, something essential about that person.
That's such a good point. It's like our minds have this superpower to see through the illusions, get to the heart of things.
That's a great way to put it. But if our senses can deceive us about something as simple as a piece of wax, What else might we be wrong about? How do we know anything we perceive is actually real?
Ooh, that gets a bit unsettling.
Mm.
It's like everything we think we know about the world is suddenly up for grabs.
hmm
So where does Descartes go from there? Does he have any answers for us? Or are we just stuck in this whirlpool of doubt forever?
Well, he comes to a realization the only thing he can be absolutely certain of is his own thinking.
So out of all this uncertainty, that's the one fixed point he can hold on to.
Right. And that insight, as simple as it might seem, has huge implications for how we understand knowledge. It lays the foundation for his whole theory of knowledge. And we'll dive into that more in the next part of our deep dive.
I am hooked. So we've established that Descartes is doubting everything except his own existence as a thinking being. But what does that actually mean? What are the implications of this radical doubt? What happens next?
Well, those are the questions we'll explore as we go deeper into Descartes' second meditation. And trust me, it's about to get even wilder.
I can't wait. Okay, we're back. And ready to get even deeper into this second meditation by Descartes.
It's quite a ride.
It really is. So last time we left off with this idea that, Descartes is doubting everything, except the fact that he exists as a thinking thing.
Right, that's his starting point. That I think, therefore I am.
Right, exactly. But it's like it leads to even more questions.
Yeah.
If our senses can deceive us,
Mm-hmm.
and that whole wax example really shows how that can happen, then how can we be sure about anything we perceive in the external world? How do we even know what's real?
Yeah, it's like he's opened this Pandora's box of doubt.
He really has. So where does he go from there?
Well, he starts exploring this relationship between the mind and the body. He's established that the mind, that's the most certain thing. But he still has this physical body, and it seems to be part of his experience.
Right, but he's already said we can't fully rely on our senses.
Yeah.
So how does he approach understanding the body? Does he just dismiss it as, unreliable?
Not exactly. He actually uses the example of the wax again. Remember how its properties change when it melts?
Yeah, like the color and the shape and all that.
Right. Well, Descartes says that our bodies are kind of like that too. They're constantly changing, growing, aging, being affected by everything around us.
Okay, so our bodies are always in flux, but our minds, they're what perceives these changes, right?
Mhm.
And understands that we're still the same us throughout all of that.
Exactly. It's like our bodies might be like ships that are constantly being repaired with, old planks replaced by new ones.
Oh, I like that.
But the mind, the eye that thinks, that remains constant.
That's what makes the mind so powerful, huh? It's like the foundation of our identity, our continuity through time.
You got it.
It's like our minds are the anchors in this, ever-changing sea of our physical existence.
I love that analogy.
Thanks. But it does raise another question, though. If the mind and body are so distinct, how do they interact?
Now you've hit upon one of the most enduring mysteries in philosophy, the mind-body problem.
Mind-body problem, okay.
It's the question of how does something non-physical, like the mind, interact with something physical, like the body? And it's a question that has puzzled philosophers for, well, centuries. Even today, there isn't one definitive answer.
So even Descartes, the master of doubt, couldn't crack this one completely.
He proposed some theories, of course. He believed there must be some connection, some point of interaction between the mind and the body. He even suggested the pineal gland, which is this tiny structure in the brain. He thought maybe that was the point of connection.
Oh, interesting. So he was looking for a physical location where the, immaterial mind could somehow interface with the material body. But, modern science tells us it's not that simple, right?
Right. We've learned a lot about the brain since Descartes' time.
Mm-hmm.
And the pineal gland, it doesn't quite hold the key to the mind-body mystery in the way he imagined. But, his efforts, they show just how challenging this problem really is.
It's just, fascinating to think about. It's almost like trying to imagine how two completely different universes could overlap and influence each other. Even if we don't have all the answers, it really makes you appreciate the complexity of our own existence.
Absolutely. And that's just one thread in this rich tapestry of Descartes' second meditation. He also digs into, the nature of truth, the existence of God, the
Yep.
limits of human knowledge.
Oh, wow. There's even more to unpack here. He doesn't just leave us hanging with this mind-body puzzle.
Oh, not at all. Remember, he's on this search for certainty. He wants a foundation for knowledge that's, absolutely unshakable. And that's where his idea of clear and distinct perceptions comes in.
Okay, let's break that down a bit. What exactly does he mean by clear and distinct? It sounds like, I don't know, something you'd see on a shampoo bottle.
Uh-huh. Right. Well, for Descartes, a clear perception.
Yeah.
It's one that's immediately present and available to the mind. And a distinct perception is one that's so well defined that it can't be confused with anything else.
So it's about having like this rock solid understanding of something where there's just no room for doubt.
You got it. Think about looking at a tree. You have a clear perception when you see it directly in front of you, and a distinct perception when you can clearly differentiate it from, say, a bush or a house.
Okay, so it's like having like perfect mental clarity, a kind of 20/20 vision for the mind.
Exactly. But then the question becomes, how does this help us escape the trap of our own minds and understand the world outside of our thoughts?
Right, good point.
And this is where things get really interesting. Descartes argues that these clear and distinct perceptions, they're our ticket to truth. He believes that God, as a perfectly good being, wouldn't deceive us with ideas that are clear and distinct to our minds.
Hold on. Didn't Descartes start this whole thing by doubting everything, including God?
Mhm.
How did God suddenly come back into the picture?
Ah, you're picking up on the nuances here. It's a fascinating twist in his argument. He actually uses the very fact that he has this idea of God, this concept of a perfect and infinite being. He uses that as proof that God must exist.
Whoa, okay. I'm trying to wrap my head around this. So
Yeah.
because I have this idea of God, which is clear and distinct, and God wouldn't deceive me, that means God must exist. It's kind of mind-boggling. But I think I'm starting to get it.
It's a complex chain of reasoning. But that's Descartes for you. He takes us on these incredible intellectual journeys, pushing the boundaries of thought, challenging our assumptions about what we know and how we know it.
And it's not over yet. We still have the third meditation to go.
Yeah.
But I think we've covered a lot of ground here in part two. We went from a doubting everything to the mind-body problem, and now we're getting into the nature of truth and the role of God in Descartes' philosophy. It's a lot.
It is. It's a lot to take in, but it's incredibly rewarding. Descartes really pushes us to think critically, to question our assumptions, to explore the depths of our own mind.
And honestly, it's making my brain hurt a little, but in a good way.
I know what you mean.
All right, well, we'll be back with the final part of our deep dive into Descartes' second meditation right after this.
And we are back for the final part of our deep dive into Descartes' second meditation.
It's been a wild ride, hasn't it?
It really has. Last time we were talking about those clear and distinct perceptions. That was a new one for me.
Yeah, it's a key idea for Descartes.
So remind me, what's that all about again?
Well, it's all about those ideas that are so clear in our minds, so well-defined that we just can't doubt them. Like they're just undeniably true for us.
Okay, yeah, that's starting to come back to me. But how do those clear and distinct perceptions actually tell us anything about the world outside of our own minds? Isn't that what we're trying to figure out here?
Exactly. And this is where Descartes makes a pretty bold move. He argues that God, as a perfectly good being, wouldn't deceive us, right? Like, he wouldn't put these ideas in our minds, these clear and distinct perceptions, if they didn't actually correspond to something real. So God's like vouching for the accuracy of our perceptions. But wait, didn't Descartes start this whole thing by doubting everything?
Yeah.
Including God. How does God suddenly become the guarantor of truth here?
Yeah, it's a little twisty, I know. But remember, he found that certainty in the fact that he's a thinking thing. And then he uses that thinking to examine this idea of God, this concept of a perfect infinite being. And he realizes that's just so grand, so far beyond his own limited capacity to even think about, that it couldn't have come from him.
So he's saying this idea of God, it had to have come from somewhere else, from God himself.
Exactly. He's basically using the power of his own thinking to prove that there's something beyond his thinking. It's like this self-contained proof, a loop that begins and ends with the mind.
Oh, okay.
And once he's established the existence of God, he uses God's goodness as the foundation for trusting those clear and distinct perceptions about the external world. It's like saying, okay, if God is good and he wouldn't trick me, then the things I perceive clearly and distinctly, they must be true.
Wow. I'm starting to see how this all fits together. It's like a philosophical puzzle. He starts with this radical doubt, right? Finds certainty in the thinking self, uses that certainty to prove God. And then he uses God to establish that, yeah, our perceptions can be reliable. It's a lot of steps.
It is. But it's how Descartes builds that bridge from the internal world of the mind to the external world of reality. He's showing us this path from doubt to knowledge, from the subjective to the objective.
Man, this is blowing my mind. It's incredible to think that such profound ideas can come from something as simple as just doubting.
It really speaks to the power of philosophy. Descartes, he wasn't afraid to question everything, to go down that rabbit hole of doubt. And in doing so, he discovered these new ways of thinking about ourselves and the world around us.
So what can we really take away from all of this wild ride through Descartes' second meditation? It seems like it's about more than just, proving the existence of God or figuring out, like, what reality is.
It's about questioning our assumptions, examining the foundations of our knowledge, and using the power of our own minds to really seek truth. Descartes shows us that even when we're faced with this radical doubt, there's still hope for certainty, for knowledge, for understanding ourselves and the universe we're in.
It's a call to be more critical thinkers, right?
Mm.
To not just take things at face value,
Yeah.
to dig deeper, ask why, and use our reason to really make sense of the world. It's pretty empowering when you think about it.
Absolutely. It reminds us that philosophy, it's not just about abstract ideas, it's about understanding ourselves, our place in the world, the very nature of existence, asking these big questions and not being afraid of the answers, even if they challenge everything we think we know.
Well, listeners, that brings us to the end of our deep dives into Descartes' second meditation. I hope you've enjoyed this journey with us. Maybe you've learned a few things along the way. Maybe you're just more confused than when we started.
Uh-huh. Either way, it's been a pleasure.
It has. Until next time, keep those minds curious and don't be afraid to, doubt a little.